It's times like these when I wish I were back at Warner Brothers.
Our favorite sitcoms chopped at the height of the action. Something's just not right here. These were the funniest, the most beloved shows of all time. But there seemed to be a certain episode these shows all had in common, an episode or a season that took it way too far, or simply fell flat, or their parent company just deemed it too expensive. But we'd argue that these shows should have been given another chance. But hey, we're just the viewer. Welcome to Do You Remember? We've got tales of episodes that took it way too far, selfish, astronomical salaries, and secret feuds that all had their part in taking down some of the best shows of all time. These are the stories of the shows canceled too soon.
That's very touching, honey. Now rub my feet.
Peg, I wouldn't rub your feet if a genie popped out of them.
Try and separate Married from its risque premise, and you wouldn't really have a show at all. So just how did we get the most memorable sitcom that pushed all the boundaries? Turns out a lot happened behind the scenes. And although this show put a network on the map, some episodes were too racy to make, and haters of the show had a part in saving the series. The cast shuffle. Ed O'Neill's gruff lewdness and Katie Seagal's long-suffering sarcasm are practically synonymous with this show.
Well, everyone in high school said no one was stupid enough to marry the big redhead.
But these things don't materialize in their final form right away. When show creators Michael G. Moy and Ron Levitt pitched their sitcom idea, they envisioned Sam Kinison and Roseanne Barr as Al and Peggy. Kinison famous for his loud, charismatic preaching, and building a friendship with Robin Williams and Jim Carrey via stand-up at the Comedy Store. And Roseanne Barr, the other side of the crass coin, was a rising comedy star at the time, but both told show creators that they were aiming for movie gigs, though Barr would get her own sitcom just a year after Married with Children debuted. Michael Richards, famous for his wacky entrances and mannerisms as Jerry's neighbor Kramer on Seinfeld. But years before, he auditioned to play Al, but didn't quite fit. Instead, the showrunners happened to see Ed O'Neill play Lenny in a Hartford production of Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. And then O'Neill auditioned with something special. 80% of the men who auditioned for Al played him like Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners.
This idiot's got the gall to come down here and put the late show on when I'm trying to get to sleep and I gotta go to work tomorrow.
And 20% acted like Jack from The Shining. Here's Bundy. It just doesn't work. O'Neill put his own twist on Al by sighing and slumping his shoulders before going into his home. And the sheer dejection as he entered won him the role. No one ever saw the unaired pilot, but we had some different Bundys. Originally, Tina Caspary played Kelly, and Hunter Carson played Bud Bundy. And we know Christina Applegate and David Faustino took the roles permanently, which rounded out this perfectly imperfect family. Married with Fox. It's 7 o'clock in the evening on April 5th, 1987. It's Sunday, so a full work week is just around the corner. And on TV, something historic is happening. Fox makes its primetime network debut with a new sitcom, Married with Children, partnered with The Tracy Ullman Show. And the pair got replayed again at 9 p.m. for those who were putting the kids down at 7. And from beginning with history to ending with some too. The final episode aired on June 9th, 1997.
That's one desperate little chimp, huh?
Compiling 259 original episodes, making it the longest-running live-action series in the network's history. It was also the longest-running show that never won an award, until Baywatch ended, so yay? And we also have a Baywatch cast rewind if you were a fan of the slow-mo run as much as Al Bundy was. The Gall of Seagal. Just as Archie Bunker had Maude to keep him in check, Al Bundy had Peggy.
You're gonna start nagging about this, aren't you?
I do not nag!
All right.
Though instead of keeping each other in check, it was more of an endless feedback loop of humanity's worst vices. bloody brilliant. Peggy doesn't make life easy for Al, like a sheer refusal to cook or clean or do a lot of things. And that was all more absurd thanks to Katie Sagal's genius ideas for her character. When Sagal auditioned for the role, she had this idea to dress Peggy like a parody of a 1960s housewife. So she brought in her own bouffant wig and a 1960s waitress attire, and the producers loved it. And the look was completed with capri leggings, clunky belt, and skinny heels. The budget didn't allow for a dedicated wig for 3 whole seasons, so before then, Peggy stayed a brunette. Working with children. When the word children is in the show title, you know what you're getting.
Well, Al, didn't you notice I was getting fat?
Well, yeah.
And Katie Sagal's real-life pregnancy highlighted this, and the showrunners worked it into season 6. But sadly, Katie Sagal miscarried. The show addressed this sudden loss by calling it all a nightmare that Al had. It was such a dark topic covered in a clever way. Sagal became pregnant 2 more times during the show, but they decided to go in a hide the stomach angle rather than embrace it. No bad press. Some of the most iconic pieces of entertainment history got pretty rough starts. MASH was 46th in the ratings for season 1, before climbing to the 4th spot for season 2. The Addams Family only lasted 2 seasons, and became more popular as time went on. Married with Children was no exception. In fact, during season 1, David Faustino went to a crowded mall wearing a shirt with the show's logo, and no one approached him. But don't worry, a divine power was looking after the show. Beer? No. A hater. Family values activist Terry Ricolta was so disgusted by how raunchy and immoral the show was. They started a letter writing campaign, complaining about how the series would corrupt the American family. Specifically, she was appalled by the episode Her Cups Runneth Over, full of lingerie, crude humor, and unsolicited groping. And they did well. Their complaints got a lot of news coverage, which in turn brought fresh eyes to the hysterical dumpster fire that was happening over on Fox. Oh, the power of free publicity. You know who was a fan of the show? Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
Well, technically Sir Roger Moore, but same thing. He called the sitcom a guilty pleasure. Plus, he had to support Katie Sagal, the daughter of late director Boris Sagal, and one of Moore's closest friends. We're in good company, Em. A conflicted cast. Amanda Burse, who played next-door neighbor Marcy, had a few things in common with her character. The biggest was that she and Ed O'Neill didn't get along swimmingly in real life. They respected each other, but by season 3 they were pretty much staying apart, due to frequent arguments. And when Burse came out as gay, O'Neill did support her, but neither he nor David Faustino were invited to her wedding. Burse stated that she was afraid that they would laugh at the sight of 2 women in tuxedos, and Ed O'Neill has confirmed that he probably would've. Some battles happened on set too, like between Katie Sagal and Buck the dog, who kept trying to make some unwanted moves on Sagal's leg. It got so bad, producers were ready to fire Buck and the owner, and play the dog like a bad dream too.
Wait a minute. I'm not an eagle.
Too hot for TV. Former President George Bush once told Americans to be like the Waltons. What he also could have said was, don't be like the Bundys. Al and Bud could be a tag team of taboo behavior between groping women, fondling mannequins, and Al's rivalry with feminists and gay people. Even its premiere raised a few eyebrows, but others watched for this scandalous behavior. And once, Fox even had to put its foot down for the season 3 episode I'll See You in Court, originally slated for the 1989 season, but necessary censor edits pushed it all the way back to 2002. Some countries got an uncut version of I'll See You in Court.
I want to have sex on the kitchen table.
I want to have a meal on the kitchen table.
In which the Bundy parents try to shake up their love life at an inn. That made recordings of people being intimate, including the Bundys and the Rhodes. Killer tribute. Let's set the record straight. One popular myth states that Al's last name came from the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy, when in reality, the Bundy show creators were nodding to was pro wrestler King Kong Bundy. Who actually has 2 appearances on the show, first as himself, then as Uncle Irwin. The Rhodes got similar treatment, named after another pro wrestler, Dusty Rhodes. Speaking of tie-ins with other famous icons, watch the opening credits and you'll see cars driving on the interstate. That clip is taken directly from National Lampoon's Vacation. You can even see the Griswold station wagon. And I think the Griswolds would get along with the Bundys. As for Marcy Darcy's name, that's inspired by the name of Marcy Carsey, a producer of The Cosbys. You see, when Married with Children was still in its very early days of production, its working title was Not the Cosbys. The goal was to create a sitcom family that was not polished or idyllic, and boy did they succeed. Oh my stars, do you believe in magic? Bewitched made it so. And as we watched spellbound Samantha with the twitch of her nose, a little magic found its way to us on the other side of the television screen. So how did they even decide on the nose twitch?
I don't know.
And those practical effects, how were they done? A tale of 2 movies. Bewitched rose to fame during a pretty revolutionary time in television, focusing on female leads and throwing in the supernatural. But even something as fantastically trendy as Bewitched got inspiration elsewhere. Show creator Sol Sachs took inspiration from I Married a Witch and the film Bell, Book, and Candle.
I'm one.
You're one what?
One of the people that the book's about, and Nikki's one too.
Sachs didn't have to worry about copyright issues like its competitor I Dream of Jeannie did, since Columbia Pictures owned those films and Screen Gems, which made Bewitched. 2 of our leading ladies have some surprisingly biblical roots. The first book of Samuel has a story of Saul going to the Witch of Endor so he can commune with the late Samuel. Samuel and Endor became Samantha and Endora. Originally they were named Cassandra and Matilda respectively. I like the change. Something wicked this way comes. Let's talk about that iconic intro. Goliath Animation Studio Hanna-Barbera created the opening, adding it to a packed resume that includes the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, and the Jetsons. Some Flintstones episodes even feature magical cameos by the Bewitched cast.
Your dog certainly likes chocolate cookies. Hi kids, I'm Samantha.
As for the catchy music, Bewitched did originally have a theme song with lyrics. Jack Keller composed the music before he worked with the Monkees. Howard Greenfield wrote the lyrics, but they never were used in the show. But a bunch of artists did record their own versions, like Steve Lawrence and Peggy Lee.
Bewitched, bewitched, you've got me in your spell.
Producers toyed with the idea of using the song Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered from the Rodgers and Hart musical Pal Joey, but it would have been quite expensive. Cutting costume corners. Bewitched kept a pretty small costuming budget, so much so that extras and even supporting actors were told what to bring to wear from their own wardrobe. Even Samantha and Endora were wearing outfits straight from the closets of Elizabeth and Agnes at times. Pretty much everything you see Sam wear is an outfit Elizabeth owns. Throw in the fact that Samantha also had a wicked counterpart Serena to clothe, and wowzers, that's a lot of pressure. The show credited Serena to the pseudonym Pandora Spox, a play off of Pandora's Box. And this fake actress even got her own fan mail. And that also meant that the 8.5 carats of old mine diamond brooch that Endora always wore was actually Agnes Moorehead's. Elizabeth Montgomery famously loved the brooch, and when Agnes died, she willed it to her TV daughter. A twitch in time. With a simple nose twitch, you knew Samantha was weaving some magic. usually at Darren's expense. It became as iconic as Jeannie's bow in I Dream of Jeannie, and Lee Majors' slow motion run in $6 Million Man. But it's so specific. What made them choose a nose twitch instead of waving her hands or a wand? At first, the script simply declared Samantha cast spells with some vague arm gesture. Show director William Asher wanted something out of the ordinary, and it actually took 2 months to find, coming about when Asher told Elizabeth Montgomery, "Do that thing you do when you're nervous." She couldn't think of what it was, got nervous, and boom, a simple, wonderful nose twitch occurred. They added a xylophone to really highlight the little movement, which is achieved by moving your upper lip and letting the nose follow. Let's give it a try. Making the magic happen. In today's world of CGI and post-production magic, it's fun to hear the links that shows had to go to for some practical magic. Animatronics, clever doubles, camera cuts, they used it all. Look carefully and you'll spot a near invisible wire lifting up a household item. Or in other cases, they used fast motion or backwards motion film. On the days when Samantha cleans up a room with magic, Montgomery would raise her arms up, the director would call cut, and she'd stay like that while stagehands moved everything around. Then a simple action and she'd finally move again. Just mind the pyrotechnics. Bernard Fox, who played Dr. Bombay, shared that he'd been injured by them sometimes. And when characters changed clothes in the blink of an eye, they actually secured their shoes to the floor exactly where they were standing. Then run backstage, change, and step back into their shoes. Now that's how you nail a mark. York for Sergeant. For the first 5 seasons of Bewitched, Dick York played Samantha's lucky and unlucky mortal husband in way over his head.
Thank you from the bottom of my withers.
Not at all, my boy.
Then he was replaced by Dick Sargent, who played a different Darren. Back in 1959, York was in the film They Came to Cordura, and on the second to last day of filming, an accident led to him tearing all the muscles in the right side of his back and damaging his spine. His recuperation options were drugs. Really strong drugs. And this injury and drug reliance chased him through the first half of Bewitched. And York became tired and grumpy and in a lot of pain. It affected everything. And he even had a seizure, forcing him to miss whole episodes before the replacement. Ironically, Agnes Moorehead didn't agree with Andorra and loved Dick York. So when Sargent took over, she said, quote, "I don't like change."
Darren. Stop, Mother. Too late.
It's hard to say who was better, certainly a personal preference. York played an indignant Darren because magic was new and frightening. But when Sargent took over, he figured Darren had years to get used to marrying a witch, so he shouldn't be yelling so much. And we want to know, do you have a preference of the two Darrens? Let us know in the comments. This broom would not fly today. Sometimes sitcoms try a very special episode, highlighting an important message or deviating from the humor formula. And Bewitched had something like that. I'm talking about the famous Christmas episode Sisters at Heart, where a hateful exec didn't want to do business with Darren because he thought he married an African-American woman. Meanwhile, Sam's daughter Tabitha was best friends with the woman's daughter, and the two loved pretending they were sisters. A spell from Samantha went awry, and the two ended up with black and white spots on their skin. And she used a similar trick to basically put everyone in blackface at the company exec's party. And that helped him see Sam's important message of equality. This heavier episode was written by 24 African-American 10th grade students at Jefferson High School. And while blackface is never a good idea for a show, or anything for that matter, the innocent and powerful message reminds us that we should listen to kids more often. The Next Generation. Elizabeth Montgomery was actually pregnant 3 times during the show's run. For her first pregnancy, they shot all the scenes without her. Then they did her parts separately after she had given birth, while pregnancies number 2 and 3 led to the in-show birth of Tabitha and then Adam. The name Tabitha was Montgomery's own idea, from the daughter of actor Edward Andrews. She loved it because it sounded old-fashioned, but it's like nails on a chalkboard when she sees it spelled with 2 A's in the show, instead of an I. Hallowed Homes. 1164 Morning Glory Circle is practically a pilgrimage spot for the Wiccan, and it's still standing. Its new location is the Warner Brothers Ranch Studios. There aren't formal tours, but supposedly staff there can be talked into showing you around. Of course, this property was mostly used for exterior shots. The inside, backyard, garage, and porch were mostly a soundstage. In every single episode, this famous abode prominently features the color green, an homage to the color as a witchy symbol. Think the Wicked Witch of the West, and the face paint kids might use for Halloween. Bewitched also features a cameo from a rival house. In season 4, episode 21, Hippie Hippie Hooray, we get to see Larry and Louise Tate's home, and their kitchen is actually Tony Nelson's from I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, Major Healy, what are you talking about?
Oh, you know what I'm talking about. I know he's handsome and irresistible. You gotta think about Tony.
When you see outside shots of Samantha's home, keep an eye out for the Jeannie house just down the street. The magic ended for Montgomery. All good things must come to an end. For most of its runtime, Bewitched ranked high, usually near the top 10. And it was green-lit for seasons 9 and 10. Problem was, Montgomery didn't even approve of going into season 5. In fact, she was ready to retire before Bewitched ever began, but her husband and show producer Bill Asher talked her out of it. Then, ABC kept making offers you don't need to be a godfather to know not to refuse. But with each season, it became harder and harder for money to make a difference. And little by little, Montgomery noticeably didn't want to be there. Finally, she walked away in search of much grittier roles. But it helped that she owned 20% of the show and got a ton off of residuals. For more on where she went after Bewitched, be sure to check out our cast rewind after this. We still have a little magic left. The success of this show comes from the great ideas from other franchises it borrowed from, or just took footage from, the incredibly cool toys it used, and the up-close and personal input it got from the Navy.
All I'm doing is going blind.
Well, that's why they stopped using it, sir.
So it's sad to say this trailblazing titan that laid the groundwork for the third most popular crime drama on TV didn't get the graceful send-off it so very much deserved. Even the actors who told us these great stories were shocked. So what went wrong? And how did current events impact what the writers could film?
Is that right, Commander Miller?
Yes, sir.
A match made in Navy Yard heaven. So just what is JAG? It's an acronym that stands for Judge Advocate General, referring to uniformed lawyers that oversee pretty much everything legal for the US Navy, from rank designations, legal counsel, ethics, even environmental law. The 1990s saw us riding the high of great action shows with the graphics and tech to really sweep us off our feet. So why go the legal drama route? Well, there were two giants vying for viewers' attention at that time. The high-flying Top Gun and Handling the Truth, A Few Good Men. Both of these were very personal to TV producer Donald Belisario, who did serve in the Marine Corps. And he saw too many promotions and art that were anti-war and anti-soldier.
Rambo, I don't make the orders. I take them just like you.
Belisario made a point of dropping this trope, which we can see right off the bat in one of his first big creations, Magnum P.I. And he kept right on working with Universal with Quantum Leap, but then that door closed too. History in the making. It was during a slow work period that Belisario set to researching a new plot for a new show. The timing couldn't have been better. The year was 1994, and for the first time ever, 500 women were reporting for duty aboard combat ships as active part of combat units. It was a huge step from the clerical work they'd been restricted to just a few years prior, and many of them took to aviation. When Belisario learned about this, he saw a scene clear as day in his mind. 2 F-14s, a female radar intercept officer, and an air group commander determined to, quote, put her through her paces. Stuff like this happens on 2 battlefields, one out in the field or sky, so to speak, and one at a desk, pushing all the papers to keep the military machine moving fairly for everyone.
He's a member of the Judge Advocate General Corps. He's a lawyer.
So he approached NBC, pitching a new show combining Top Gun and A Few Good Men. A short life and grand reprieve. Once he got the green light, Belisario got to filming. NBC West Coast president Don Ohlmeyer exercised a lot of control over the plot and casting, obviously favoring action over legal drama. And this creative battle of wills went on for 22 episodes of filming. NBC only aired 21 and moved JAG from Saturdays to Wednesday. It struggled to stand out against Beverly Hills 90210 and The Jeff Foxworthy Show.
Sandra, help me! I can't find the remote! Where did you hide it?
So, with pretty dismal reviews, NBC pulled the plug on JAG. That's it, the show was canceled. The end. Well, not quite, of course. Like a Navy aircraft carrier, CBS came chugging along to pick up JAG and keep it moving forward. Belisario got a lot more creative freedom with CBS, which took the show even in the middle of a season and aired it Friday nights. There was plenty of fodder for story ideas, since JAG employed a ripped from the headlines approach early on. And this was just after the infamous tailhook scandal, where dozens of men were accused of severe misconduct towards the women they worked with.
Oh, I get it all too well, Master Chief. The world has changed and you got left behind.
More stories to tell. When Belisario was learning about JAG, he found out about all the connected branches that basically make up the law there. At first, he just focused on prosecution and defense to keep things easy to follow. But by season 8, it was time to expand, but carefully. Enter NCIS for younger demographics, designed so no one could call it JAG 2.0. So in 2003's episode Ice Queen, he introduced Navy Criminal Investigate Service agents. You know, when we met the boss himself, Jethro Gibbs, very special agent Tony, Goth, Abby, and the most informative Ducky, who all became mainstays on NCIS. This set up Ice Queen and Meltdown as backdoor pilots to new shows. Belisario didn't really want to keep his spinoffs related because he thought it might stifle NCIS's future.
Smart boys. Yeah. Start those engines. Let's get the hell out of here.
Luckily, he didn't have anything to worry about because NCIS is 20 seasons in, and it's inspiring more spin-offs of its own. NCIS Los Angeles, Hawaii, and New Orleans. And all this is thanks to JAG. NCIS is enjoying a spot as the third longest scripted primetime series, only behind Law & Order and Law & Order SVU. Semper Fi. Now, Belisario was dedicated to authenticity and a positive portrayal of the military. When he watched anything war-related, he observed, quote, "Anytime you saw a Vietnam vet in television, he was an alcoholic, a druggie, a shooter in a tower, a wife beater, a killer, or insane. And you never saw a positive image." So this shaped a lot of his choices for the show, especially realism. Producers and Navy officers had to learn each other's languages. And so they had retired Marine Corps Master Sergeant Matt Siglock on hand for the show's whole duration, serving as the official military technical advisor. And all this realism required the actors to do their homework too. The star, David James Elliott, had to read up on military etiquette to play harm. Sometimes the Navy put a hard no on plot points, like when a submarine accidentally dropped a nuke. But when the Navy liked what they saw or read, they allowed JAG to even use stock footage. JAG would take the help where it could, since the budget wasn't always so huge. So the show took footage from a very different source too, movies. Because they worked with Paramount, JAG got access to its library of movies. Yes, including Top Gun and Clear and Present Danger.
I guess when I see something, I go right after it.
It takes a lot more than just fancy flying.
Did those submarine shots look familiar? Then you must have seen Hunt for Red October or Crimson Tide. The right gear to fly high. Whenever we did see practical shots in JAG, and not just Top Gun footage, we have prop master George Tours to thank for that. The guy had a laundry list of gear to secure. Among the cast of vehicles, the F-14 Tomcat was the star. But that thing was so big, they had to dismantle it and rebuild it. Sometimes they cut corners and the aircraft is actually an FA Hornet or Super Hornet, which is the plane of choice for the Navy's Blue Angels. We get to see plenty of naval vessels too. The favorite to film on was the USS Forrestal CV-59. The names were changed, but JAG also used USS John F. Kennedy and USS Enterprise. No, not the Starship. Real life impacts art. For all the creative freedom Belisario had during JAG's reprieve, some big things impacted what he could do. First, after 9/11, it became much harder to easily access all those restricted facilities, which is understandable but was a huge hurdle for them to tackle. Then rewatch season 8 and you might notice the lieutenant herself is at a desk, holding stuff in front of her, generally hiding a lot. Well, that's because Belle was actually pregnant in real life. That's why we have Sarah pretending to be pregnant and then tossing away her padding, because when that happened, Belle had finally given birth. On the opposite end, art impacted life. As Belisario put it, quote, "Every Tuesday the show would run, and every Wednesday the enlistment would spike." Why did JAG get canceled? Belisario always wanted younger viewers hooked, but it always stayed more popular with older viewers. JAG held strong for 10 seasons, 227 episodes. That's a long time to run, and the crew had very short notice it was ending at all. Both advertisers and producers loved the 18 to 49 demographic, and JAG failed to capture this group and said goodbye to David James Elliott, in part to a back and forth contract dispute.
Everything they do defies logic.
Belisario and the writers got a grand total of a couple weeks to plan a finale of one of the best shows of the 1990s. And in turn, it was all kind of left as a cliffhanger, and not the send-off JAG deserved. But we can see plenty of the actors and characters in NCIS, I guess. And Belisario has left us plenty of other shows that became titans in their own right. But he admitted to fearing when JAG was gone, there would be a huge hole in media showing the military in a good light. It was a fresh take on the hardships of active duty, mixed with the interpersonal drama, politics, romance, and action. JAG really had it all. Ahoy, mateys! This is your captain speaking, welcoming you aboard the SS Nostalgia. This time we're taking a stroll down the deserted beach of Gilligan's Island. So just sit back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. So how does JFK relate to Gilligan's Island? Just where is this far-off abandoned place? How did everyone associated with the island and the state of Colorado get their names? We reveal all this and more as we sail back to Gilligan's Island, making a statement. It's the ultimate conversation starter. If you were stranded on a desert island, what one item are you bringing? That was the question posed during a public speaking course attended by none other than Sherwood Schwartz, who remembered that question years later after graduation. So he decided to make a show out of it. Gilligan's Island was meant to be a political criticism, throwing a bunch of very different people together and showing that, hey, when survival requires it, we can all get along. But when he pitched the show using words like microcosm and metaphor, it was a bit of a hard sell, especially labeled as a comedy. CBS programming execs initially did not love the pilot, but they checked in with 3 separate test audiences who loved it. So CBS plugged Gilligan's Island into its upcoming fall schedule. Assembling the crew. The SS Minnow's manifest nearly looked very different. For one thing, show creator Sherwood Schwartz wanted Jerry Van Dyke to play the titular and bumbling Gilligan. Problem was, Van Dyke called the pilot script, quote, "the worst thing I've ever read." His words, not mine, Sherwood. Instead, his agent redirected him to a much safer bet, My Mother the Car, which lasted a grand total of 1 season. because it was about a mother reincarnated as a 1928 Porter automobile. Yikes. But Van Dyke has no regrets, because of the dreaded threat of typecasting. Retroactively, of course, he spots the difficulty of being known as Gilligan for the rest of his career. So in his eyes, he dodged a bullet. And with a PhD in botany and a penchant for inventing, Professor Roy Hinckley is a pretty impressive presence. And that's why we see him played by John Gabriel in the pilot, but never again. Russell Johnson replaced him because producers didn't think Gabriel looked old enough for all the degrees and fancy titles. After changes to the pilot, Mary Ann now entered as a wholesome, all-around good girl farmer to replace Bunny, and she required a new face to go with it. Raquel Welch actually turned up for auditions for Mary Ann, but her status as a sex symbol detracted from the girl next door vibes. And if you need a Welsh fix, she made our countdown of 1970s bombshells, so cue that one up next. Be careful though, it's hotter than the island's sun.
Ask him about me.
No, in due time, I must be crafty.
As for Natalie Schaefer, she heard filming the pilot came with a free trip to Hawaii, and that was a big requirement for her to get on board the SS Minnow. Producers went through a lot of actors on their wish list for their potential castaways, and included everyone from Jane Mansfield and Dabney Coleman to Carol O'Connor. Man, he would have been one grouchy captain, but I'd watch that. Meanwhile, the role of Ginger would go to 6 women through the show, spin-offs, and sequels. Tina Louise wasn't entirely thrilled with the role. She thought it made her shallow and nothing but a pretty face. Skipper was the toughest to cast, looking for that balance between angry yet caring. The casting call went out while Alan Hale Jr. was filming Bullet for a Bad Man, and he had to sneak off while filming and hitchhiked with Bob Denver himself. They would travel by horseback, taxi, and airplane to get to the call. Must have been the prequel to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Imperial Sail. Name a favorite iconic music score, and John Williams probably composed it. The man transformed 2 cello notes into the sound of dread for Jaws, and composed a sweeping adventurous theme for both Harry Potter and of course Star Wars. And Gilligan's theme would go through some changes, but it too had John Williams' musical influence. One version had Sherwood Schwartz singing a fun calypso number set to a tune composed by Williams.
What happened now will bring you a smile on Gilligan's Isle.
But for perspective, he was still going by the name Johnny Williams, and I was known as Nicky Nostalgia. The original opening credits didn't even have the Professor or Mary Ann, and it started off as a 6-hour ride, not a 3-hour tour. And sharp-eyed viewers can see the flag flown at half-mast. But why? Well, filming the pilot took place in November 1963, and the shots of the SS Minnow taking off were the last ones needed. Production used Honolulu Harbor as base. Then news came that President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. Of course, all military ports closed for a period of mourning, which delayed production for days, and kinda puts an eerie, somber tone to the intro, forever immortalizing that fateful time. What's in a name? Did you know Gilligan does actually have a first name? Why, it's Willie. It's never mentioned in the series, but Schwartz's original notes declare him Willie. Probably should have told Bob Denver that, because he thought Gilligan was his first name, and the two would fight about this for years. As for the influence of Gilligan, Schwartz picked it up in a Los Angeles telephone directory. Ah, the good old days. And the SS Minnow got its name from Newton Minnow, who was the head of the FCC at the time, the agency responsible for overseeing TV and radio. The man famously played favorites, or least favorites, as he called television, quote, a vast wasteland. Tough crowd. Bob Denver may have lost the Gilligan argument, but he had plenty to brag about. If his name makes you think about Colorado, that's because the state capital is named after his own great-great-grandfather, James William Denver. And we can't skip the skipper. His mama gave him a full name too. Jonas Grumby, mentioned once in the pilot and hardly ever again.
The crew consisted of a young first mate named Gilligan. His skipper, Jonas Grumby, is an old salt in these waters.
Actually, the skipper has a whole backstory talked about in the 2003 book Gilligan's Wake, revealing he served with both JFK and Quentin McHale of McHale's Navy. Whether that book's lore is official is a subject of debate, but I certainly enjoy it. Location, location, location. CBS built the lagoon in a studio after fog made Malibu impossible. Fog be gone! But sometimes they'd have to stop taping when traffic noises from the Ventura freeway got too loud. During the winter, water temperatures dropped to the 40s, forcing Bob Denver into a wetsuit under his usual costume. Jump to 1995, the lagoon was turned into an employee parking lot. How rude. So where is this deserted island? Sometimes they drop some breadcrumbs. The coordinates mentioned in X marks the spot of 140 latitude by 10 longitude aren't actually possible. A later episode uses the coordinates 110 degrees longitude by 10 degrees latitude, which probably has a negative sign somewhere in there, putting it just off Mexico's Pacific coast. Then when the Navy sees Gilligan on a jetpack, they say he's 250 miles south of Hawaii. That makes 10 degrees latitude and negative 140 degrees longitude the most likely location. Don't try this at home. The castaways got into some dangerous stunts trying to survive that tropical island. Even though Lovey Howell was the quintessential spoiled brat, her actress was not. Natalie Schafer loved doing her own stunts and had no problem sinking in fake quicksand or splashing around a muddy lagoon, doing all this in her mid-60s. Now she had a formula for staying fit: daily swimming and what's called the ice cream diet. 1 quart of ice cream spread across 3 meals. In 5 days, she lost 3 pounds. I tried that same diet when I was about 11. It did not work great. Alan Hale Jr. was another actor who got his hands dirty, sometimes at his own expense, like when he fell out of a coconut tree and missed the crash pad just enough for his arm to hit the stage. He championed on and didn't stop for medical attention for 3 weeks to prevent a halt in filming. He still managed to lift Bob Denver and throw coconuts around, but it was not easy. As for those coconuts, sometimes real isn't always better. The show tried to stay realistic and use real coconuts for drinking, but they didn't look or work great on camera and spilled quite a lot. So they went with official props. Fans for life. Okay, admit it. Some of you thought the castaways were actually real when you were younger.
Didn't you make any TV shows on your planet?
Surely you don't think that Gilligan's Island is a...
Those poor people. Enough people did that the Coast Guard got loads of letters begging them to go out and rescue Gilligan and his pals. The famous skipper himself brought his character into the real world for a good cause. He donned his skipper costume and went to visit a terminally ill boy who loved the show. And Alan did this while he himself was battling cancer, which would take his life at 68. Now that's my captain. Case of the disappearing 4th season. Shoot, did we ever rescue Gilligan? Did we rescue them? When CBS demanded a time slot for Gunsmoke, a Western favorite of Babe Paley, wife of CBS president William Paley, Gunsmoke outdrew Gilligan's Island and we never got to see a rescue. Luckily, we do have a Gunsmoke cast breakdown if you want to meet the culprits of the replacement. The real kicker is that the cast had already bought houses in Los Angeles, so they'd be nearby and ready to start that exciting 4th season. Ouch. Cartoon clashes. Gilligan's Island will forever be in the cultural zeitgeist. Enough so that the Harlem Globetrotters got a fun crossover. No, not that crossover.
I say, Skipper, may we join in?
The series also got not 1 but 2 cartoon spin-offs. The New Adventures of Gilligan, where everyone except Tina Louise and Dawn Wells reunited to lend their voices. And Gilligan's Planet, which sent our castaways sailing the starry seas in space. It only got 13 episodes, but would be the last Saturday morning project of famed studio Filmation. Mo money, mo problems. Watching the Howells so clearly out of their element was a big highlight, but Jim Backus was no rich snob. He offered young actors advice whenever he could, and was the cheapest cast member among them. You know the guy, the one who always forgets his wallet when the bill comes. So after the wrap party, Natalie Schafer gave him a bill for $300 to make up for all those times he forgot his wallet. Certainly a fun joke, as Schafer was actually a millionaire. Investing in Beverly Hills real estate paid off for her back when buyers could nab a house for $50,000. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century was an instant hit when it premiered in 1979, and the idea of an astronaut adapting to life in the future captured the imagination of viewers of all ages. But the hit NBC series went through a major off-season overhaul, and it wasn't renewed after its 2nd season. So, why did Buck Rogers change in season 2? Why was this ahead of its time show canceled? And what are the cast members doing today? Buck Rogers was the story of an Air Force captain who suddenly awakens in the year 2491.
Where am I?
Unfortunately, like its hero, the series went into suspended animation after just one season and never fully recovered. So just what went wrong? You're not going to want to miss the shocking story about the bad decisions that brought about the untimely end to this beloved series. Welcome to the future. Buck Rogers was first released as a feature film, and after witnessing its box office success, the Peacock greenlit the show. Gil Gerard played the role of Captain William Anthony Buck Rogers, the commander of an ill-fated space shuttle mission. His life support system malfunctions in 1987, and he's held in suspended animation for 5 centuries. When he's revived, the world as he knew it had been devastated by nuclear war. Wow, bummer. Luckily, his military experience makes him an instant asset to the Earth Defense Force. But he struggles to adapt to life in New Chicago. Buck works closely alongside his friend and occasional romantic interest, Colonel Wilma Deering, played by the beautiful Erin Gray. And they take orders from Dr. Elias Hewer, played by Tim O'Connor. Buck is also accompanied by the ambiquad Tweaky,
Well, at least Tweaky's on my side.
played by Felix Silla, and voiced by the legendary Mel Blanc. Tweaky's translator, Dr. Theopolis, is voiced by Eric Server, and blogger Bill Lingeman describes him as a mysterious clock-like apparatus that may have served as a stylistic inspiration for rapper Flavor Flav. Season 1 highlights. Season 1 featured plenty of memorable popular recurring characters and guest appearances. In Planet of the Slave Girls, the original Buck Rogers, Buster Crabbe, shows up to pass the torch.
I've been doing that sort of thing since before you were born, Captain.
Roddy McDowell portrays Governor Sororian in the episode, and the legendary film heavyweight Jack Palance plays Khalil, a fanatical religious leader and slave trader who poisons Earth's food. Gary Coleman guest stars in Cosmic Whiz Kid as a 493-year-old child genius. We first meet Draconian Princess Ardala in the pilot episode, and she returns in Escape from Wedded Bliss, this time with a powerful orbital weapon and the hots for Buck. Buck is forced into a marriage with the princess, but he manages to destroy the weapon and escape from her flagship just before he has to go through with it. But in Flight of the War Witch, he forms an uneasy alliance with the princess to defeat the evil witch Zarina, portrayed by the Catwoman herself, Julie Newmar. Fellow Bat villains Cesar Romero and Frank Gorshin also make guest appearances. Suspended animation. During the first season of Buck Rogers, the series' tone was lighter than the pilot movie and showed a more positive picture of Earth's future. But the producers struggled to keep Gil Gerard happy, and a writer's strike delayed production of the second season. When production resumed, executive producer Glenn A. Larson was out, and he was replaced by John Mantley, a veteran TV executive who produced hundreds of westerns, including Gunsmoke, The Wild Wild West, and How the West Was Won. Now there was a new sheriff in town, and changes were a-comin'. Why did Buck Rogers change in Season 2? One of Buck's best-known enemies was the Draconian Princess Ardala, played by Pamela Hensley. The princess was a formidable foe who wanted to conquer the planet and make Buck her consort.
Very ballsy.
But she was written off the series for the second season, along with other series regulars, including Dr. Hewer, Dr. Theopolis, and Kane. Of course, new characters were added for Season 2, including Admiral Ephraim, Hawk, Dr. Goodfellow, and his uptight robot, Crichton. The show's format also changed drastically. Instead of defending Earth from invaders, Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky were aboard a large spaceship called the Searcher, seeking out the lost tribes of humanity. What happened to Wilma? Colonel Deering was one of the first really strong female sci-fi characters in TV history, and very much Buck's equal. Erin Gray initially turned down the role in the show after appearing in the feature film.
They wanted me to do the series, and I turned it down. over and over and over again.
But she did take the role very seriously after she changed her mind. She said, quote, "I got to pretend to be strong, and it was a really wonderful exploration to bring that within myself." But Gray also said John Mantley had a huge ego and wanted to put his own stamp on the show after taking over. She claimed she didn't fit into his vision for the show, and Mantley only brought her back after Gil Gerard threatened to quit. But her character was softened for season 2. She spent most of the time sitting at a console while Buck was out having adventures. She was also forced to shed her jumpsuit for a new uniform, one that she described as Dairy Queen in space. What happened to Tweaky? Mel Blanc, the legendary man of 1,000 voices. Well, this was one of them. He voiced Tweaky for season 1.
What about Buck?
But he was ill when production of season 2 began. Bob Elia filled in for 7 episodes until Mel recovered. But no one on the show ever acknowledged that Tweaky's voice ever changed.
What a bummer.
I guess maybe they just assumed he was sick. Wardrobe woes. Spanx took the fashion world by storm when it debuted in 2000, and the miracle garment was apparently still around in the 25th century. The female actors had to be sewn into their skin-tight costumes, which of course pleased a lot of male viewers. But Gil Gerard's rapidly expanding waistline frustrated costumer Al Leman, who nicknamed Gil the White Polish Sausage. Producer Bruce Lansbury even had an intervention with Gerard, advising him to steer clear of the craft service table. Gil Gerard has openly discussed his struggles with cocaine and alcohol in the mid-1980s and says he switched addictions to junk food while he was in recovery. Gerard developed type 2 diabetes and he had a mini gastric bypass surgery in 2005 after his weight swelled to over 350 pounds. Luckily, 2 years later, he had lost almost 150 pounds, and his year-long recovery process was documented in the Discovery Health Channel program Action Hero Makeover. Why was Buck Rogers canceled? There are several reasons why a network pulls the plug on a TV show, and most of them do apply to Buck Rogers. I suppose you could say the show did not have a future. Gil Gerard frequently clashed with the show's producers and the suits at NBC. He tried to quit the show halfway through season 1. Gerard complained that Buck was just a wise ass who made one joke after another, and he rewrote or flat out refused to shoot scenes that made his character appear weak. Gerard only returned to work after he was threatened with a lawsuit, and he told Starlog he hoped the show would not be renewed. Aaron Gray said the mood on set during season 2 was very different and very disappointing, and we felt it. We knew it wasn't going to last much longer. She also said it was a very expensive show, and broadcast networks were suddenly experiencing increased competition from cable TV. The ratings steadily declined after the season 2 premiere, and the show was abruptly canceled after 11 episodes without an official finale. What is Aaron Gray doing now? Aaron Gray stayed busy after Buck Rogers and appeared on The Fall Guy and Fantasy Island, before she spent 5 seasons as Kate on Silver Spoons. She was also very strongly considered for the role of Captain Catherine Janeway on Star Trek Voyager. That eventually went to Kate Mulgrew. Aaron currently works as a casting agent and teaches Tai Chi at UCLA. She even re-teamed with Gil Gerard to play Buck Rogers' parents in a 2010 web series, and her daughter Samantha plays Buck's girlfriend Maddie. Aaron's most recent film appearance was in the TV movie It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Murder, and we're glad she's doing well. Sci-fi fans can be fiercely loyal, but they can be just as fickle when showrunners make too many changes. Most Buck Rogers fans seem to agree that the series was off to a great start, but that John Mantley's changes ruined the things that made the show great. Gil Gerard was worried about being typecast and initially passed on the role of Buck Rogers. He was also one of the show's harshest critics, but he has learned to embrace his time with the show and frequently makes convention appearances alongside Aaron Gray. We're also happy to report he is still in good health, and his most recent appearance was in the 2019 TV movie Space Captain and Callista. Aaron Gray said she was grateful to be part of the show's legacy and found the role empowering. She said, quote, "I wanted to be her. I didn't want to take crap from anybody, you know? That helped that part of me to grow. And as it turned out, I inspired other women to be strong."
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
Watching the Rockford Files truly was a family affair back in the late 70s, and it starts with the two talented creators. The first being Stephen Cannell, fresh off creating the short-lived unconventional cop show Chase. But it was early in his career, before the A-Team, before 21 Jump Street. And the other head honcho was Roy Huggins, who had previously worked with James Garner on a handful of episodes of Maverick, before he created the wildly popular 60s show The Fugitive. And with this talented bunch leading the way, I mean, why was there a sudden break? And frankly, an unsatisfying finale? And what other files or surprises were hidden away? What health scares and personal feuds went on behind the scenes? I'm your host, Nostalgic Nick, and today we're investigating the subtle, secret ways the Rockford Files gave us a series worthy of multiple primetime Emmys and made it to the top 50 of TV Guide's greatest shows of all time. Crafting a character. The Rockford Files is used to being on top, a lot more than its main character. This series has a long stay on top 100, top 50, and even top 10 greatest show lists. And the reasons usually point to critical writing and a strong cast with great chemistry. But the core of what made the Rockford Files so beloved was its refreshing break from genre conventions. No one would compare Jim Rockford to James Bond, except to point out how different the two are.
Alone at last.
One's a suave ladies' man, and the other is hapless, usually broke, and sometimes doesn't even hurt the bad guy he's fighting, or simply hurts himself. And casting this lovable everyman was no problem. Co-creator Huggins knew Garner from his iconic Maverick, and it was the spirit of Maverick that inspired Huggins to reshape it into Rockford. It gave him the perfect setup to keep the same formula. Brett Maverick was a break from the strong, danger-loving cowboy. Maverick was unusually wholesome, instead of morally gray, and the guy was in no rush to get hurt. Sound familiar? Huggins decided to take Maverick from the 1800s to present day, this time breaking the private eye norms. Jim Rockford didn't carry a gun permit or a gun. Instead, it lived in a cookie jar covered in coffee beans. Shootouts were too violent for the story they wanted to tell, so we got car chases instead, further ingraining this different but exciting series. Originally, this bumbling character was intended to be utilized in the dramatic crime series Toma, which Huggins wrote 13 episodes for, but the networks read the script and said, wait, this is way too funny, and instructed him to remove the humor. The rewritten script was used for the pilot of Toma, but the Rockford energy was still too jarringly funny for NBC. Garner was a no-brainer match for Rockford. I mean, it's kind of his birthright. His full name is James Scott Garner, and this iconic character was named James Scott Rockford. First impressions. The Rockford Files had Jim not answering the phone before it was cool, and it created one of the most quoted answering machines ever. There were 122 unique answering machine messages across 6 seasons. It's understandable then that sometimes that creativity well dried up, so the writers would ask for ideas from anyone on payroll. They were all meant to have a comedic or absurd feeling, and sometimes reference past events.
It's Andra, remember last summer at Pat's? I've got a 12-hour layover before I go to Chicago. How about it?
Then came the theme song. High energy and thrills, just like the show. You You could never accuse Rockford Files of cutting corners. They recruited some of the biggest names in the industry. For several episodes, the writing team contained David Chase, the brain behind The Sopranos. And same goes for music. Mike Post is the composer behind Magnum P.I., L.A. Law, and Law & Order. And his colleague, Pete Carpenter, composed some of our favorite nostalgic tunes for The Andy Griffith Show and Gomer Pyle, and Oh My Stars, Bewitched. So it's no surprise that the Rockford tune became a hit. It peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. Any soccer fans here? Or should I say football? Well, the Tranmere Rovers from Britain are big fans of Rockford, and the squad sometimes runs onto the field with the theme song blaring. If these bops have you wanting to call up Rockford with a new case, well, you can, sort of. He has a phone number, of course. It's 311-555-2368. But something's wrong here. As far back as the 50s, phone companies set 555 aside. That's why just about every piece of media uses a phone number with 555.
555. 555.
555. The biggest exception being 867-5309. But dial that number and who you gonna call? Ghostbusters, of course, since they had that phone number too.
We're ready to believe you.
Putting his whole heart and knees into it. James Garner was no stranger to action and dangerous fights, and the actor insisted on doing his own stunts, especially fist fights and car chases. That's wonderful dedication, but it came at a cost. His knees were pummeled over and over, and Garner even suffered from ulcers, not to mention severe back pain, which could be crippling, as he kept taking a beating as the series went on. Well, his doctors told Garner to take it easy, and by season 6, he had to bow out from the sheer agony his body was in. Call in the stunt double, Sharp Getaway. One running gag was that Rockford could never remember license plate numbers correctly, which is kind of a big deal when tracking down a perp, but Garner could never forget his character's plate, as it was tied to his own life. His agent had the idea of 853 OKG. The numbers are actually a date, August 1953, the day Garner first began acting, and OKG stands for his home state of Oklahoma and his last name. And that rested on the back of Rockford's famous Copper Mist Pontiac Firebird Esprit. A new year meant a new car model, always in that same hue. And of course, they had to be able to perform that patented J-turn, Rockford's favorite evasive maneuver, even though it was usually to get him out of a sticky situation. Driven, pun intended, by fear. The same maneuver is even taught to Secret Service agents. Financial fame and folly. Just as powerful as its main cast was, Rockford's slew of supporting characters and guest stars was impressive too. In the past, Universal paid Garner $25,000 per episode, and it also hosted many big names in the industry, like Bill Mumy of Lost in Space fame, Abe Vigoda from Barney Miller, the Bionic Woman herself Lindsay Wagner, and even Tom Selleck.
See, Jim? Things are working out.
Later on, Magnum characters would even reference this episode of Rockford Files. All these big names shone bright under the balmy, clear skies of scenic Malibu, Los Angeles. The Rockford Files spared no expense, recruiting the best and filming on location with authenticity whenever possible. Jim's trailer was filmed right along the Pacific Coast Highway. In fact, head on over to 29 Cove Road if you want to go on a Rockford pilgrimage. A lot of the stunts were practical too, like when Jim's gorgeous car was actually damaged, and that meant needing repairs or even replacements. Garner once said producers paid $700 once for a wooden crate, just to break it in a shipyard that was already full of wooden crates. This dedication had a hefty price tag. Some inside sources say the show lost money into the millions. So when the series lost its leading man, NBC decided to pull the plug as well, just halfway through the season. Yikes. Rockford Reborn. By the time Garner was done with the Rockford Files the first round anyway, he was nominated for an Emmy 5 straight years, winning the lead actor in 1977. But that didn't mean everything was rosy when the camera stopped. Like any great series, Rockford Files got a lot of exposure when it went to syndication, and of course, more profit potential too. Universal had hope for Rockford, and thought promoting it would spark enough interest that it could start up again. Problem was, Garner didn't think he was getting paid enough, and this was a problem for a while. His response? Sue Universal for $2.2 million, or 37.5% of the net profits. The ensuing battle lasted years, and finally Universal settled with the actor outside of court. No one knows the exact terms, but thankfully it was enough to broker some peace. So much so that we got to see Garner in that gorgeous Pontiac Firebird once again. Return of Rockford. When the dust settled from the contract disputes, actor and studio agreed to 8 TV movies, this time on CBS. For the most part, it was the cast reunion we always hoped for. Except sadly, Noah Beery died in 1994. So the first in the series had a nice dedication to his memory saying, quote, "We love you and miss you, Pidge." Of course referencing Noah's nickname. The films released from 1994 to 99 took place 15 years after the show's unexpected mid-season ending. They stayed true to the charm of the original, but didn't quite have the same energy, which was pretty deliberate too, since the whole passage of time was felt. For one thing, spoiler, Rocky dies, delivering a sobering reminder of the importance of life. They also leaned into Garner's own aging and physical limitations. Injuries caused him to step down the first time, and aging is practically a plot point in the movies. It just doesn't go away after all. And everyone loves callbacks, which worked great for the films. Old contacts could reappear and ask for help, and of course Rockford obliged. But this time we could see and even hear the toll it took on him. It was also the show's chance to tie up some loose ends. Viewers finally got some closure, but what do you think? Did it work? Was this the ending you always wanted for the team? Get in the comments and you let us know your thoughts. If you were watching TV in the early 70s, you might have noticed a worrying trend. Your favorite TV shows, or at least the ones in a rural setting, started disappearing one by one. Bonanza, Petticoat Junction, immensely popular programs were suddenly gone. So why were all these iconic shows, many of whom still boasted sky-high ratings,
That's the thing about possum innards. He's just as good as second day.
unceremoniously dumped? Well, like most things in life, you gotta follow the money. While these rural-themed shows did have millions of viewers each week, their audiences skewed overwhelmingly older, and advertisers weren't exactly happy about this. Because who buys the most refrigerators in this country? It's not little cute grandmas settling in to watch Lassie. People aged 25 to 35 are the demographic that advertisers covet, and these young people just weren't watching the country-centric shows. So under great pressure from the bigwigs with the money bags, the TV studios, especially CBS, caved, and what became known as the rural purge commenced.
When I think of what they've done, I feel like a pink possum in a dry goods store.
I'm Nostalgic Nick for Do You Remember? And today we're looking at the best shows to fall victim to this rural purge. The Beverly Hillbillies. The first show on this list, for me, is the most surprising, because The Beverly Hillbillies was one of the most popular shows of the 1960s. The iconic rags to riches story tells the tale of the Clampett clan, rising from the depths of the Ozarks after oil is discovered on their property, and the family became millionaires overnight, and hightailed it to Southern California. Of course, these hicks don't know much about city living, and their fish out of water situation leads to much hilarity.
Fine, Granny, we'll commence plowing tomorrow.
But this is Beverly Hills. Dirt is dirt.
Which audiences genuinely loved. At one point during its run, an astonishing 57 million people a night tuned in to watch the hijinks of Jed, Jethro, and company. But even being rated in the top 20 TV shows for 8 of its 9 seasons wasn't enough to save the Beverly Hillbillies. And in 1971, the Clampetts got the axe. Lassie. Wait a second, not Lassie. Surely the Purge wouldn't be heartless enough to cancel the cutest and most helpful animal on TV. Well, the Purge has no feelings, my friends, and cares not for our sentiments.
What have you got to complain about?
Lassie was a modern fairy tale that followed the adventures of the eponymous rough collie and her companions, both human and animal. Generally, someone would get into a bit of trouble, such as falling down a well or being cornered by a bear, and Lassie would rush in to save the day. There was invariably a happy ending, with all problems solved in an easy 22 minutes. By the early 70s, Lassie had been on air for more than a decade and a half, and the show is still the 5th longest running US primetime television show in history. But even that fact was no match for the mighty Purge. And by 1973, the beloved collie was off the air. Mayberry RFD. Mayberry, North Carolina. The most idyllic small town in America, where Andy Taylor patrolled the streets keeping everyone safe. And America fell so in love with Mayberry while watching the Andy Griffith Show that even after Griffith and on-screen son Ron Howard left the sitcom, millions of people tuned in to watch the show's spin-off Mayberry RFD, which kept pretty much the same premise of a widower raising a young son.
Gee, Pa.
Too much salt, huh?
And most of the original townspeople made appearances. This continuation and piggyback helped Mayberry become a massive hit right off the bat. And all 3 seasons of this show were very popular. But the Purge comes for us all in the end. And even quaint little Mayberry was not immune. Mayberry RFD was canceled in 1971, and no longer could we peer into the lives of this small town utopia. Petticoat Junction.
Come ride the little train that is rolling down the tracks to the junction.
Also existing in the extended Beverly Hillbillies universe, Petticoat focuses on the rural Shady Rest Hotel, which is run by widowed Kate Bradley and her 3 daughters, Betty Jo, Bobby Jo, and Billy Jo. The women have to deal with the shiftlessness of their lazy but likable Uncle Joe, and try to keep the Hooterville Cannonball, an 1890s vintage steam-driven train, from being shut down. Petticoat Junction took place in Hooterville, the same fictional town that another hit rural sitcom, Green Acres, also took place. And characters from the Beverly Hillbillies also made appearances, but despite very good ratings, Petticoat Junction fell before the might of the Purge and was canceled in 1970. But if you want to take the Hooterville Cannonball to the Shady Rest, we have a great deep dive for you to check out next. Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
Now, if there was any show that might have escaped the jaws of the Purge, you would assume it would have been Gunsmoke, and the iconic Western drama almost did just that, lasting all the way till 1975. Gunsmoke focused on Marshal Matt Dillon as he tried to keep the peace in Dodge City, Kansas during the Wild West era. The show had a darker tone and strove to illustrate the realities of life on the frontier. And boy, did audiences love it for a very long time. By the time the Purge caught up with Gunsmoke, the show had been on the air for 20 years. At that time, a record for a primetime scripted drama, and had 635 scripted episodes. A record only very recently passed by The Simpsons.
Can't let you break my record.
Gunsmoke started in 1955, and only 3 shows that premiered in the 1960s were still on the air when it was canceled. But as we know, the Purge is almighty and relentless, and eventually even Gunsmoke had to go. Green Acres.
Land spreading out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside.
After the Beverly Hillbillies struck oil in the ratings, show creator Paul Henning went right back to the country for more, creating Petticoat Junction. And then in 1965, Green Acres was born. And just like its sister sitcoms, it became a massive hit. The sitcom follows the adventures of wealthy New York attorney Oliver Douglas and his glamorous wife Lisa. after they abandoned the glitz of the big city and bought a farm in the middle of nowhere. The show was unique in that it incorporated elements of surrealism and satire, with running jokes, recurring visual gags, and the characters repeatedly breaking the fourth wall. Despite these more modern elements of storytelling, Green Acres was swept along in the tsunami that was the rural purge, and was canceled in 1971. Bonanza. The immensely popular Western focuses on the Cartwrights, a family of bachelor cowboys who run a ranch in the vicinity of Lake Tahoe. The show was atypical at the time for a Western, as the plot rarely focused on the West, and was more often about how Father Ben and his three very different sons, Adam, Hoss, and Little Joe, cared for one another. The show also tackled very difficult social issues of the day, taking a very progressive view each time. But despite these forward-thinking ideas, Bonanza was not able to fight off the purge and was canceled in 1973. Lucky for you, we have a great throwback to revisit the Cartwright clan. Holy smokes, these are some absolute bangers of TV shows. Canned for some brash reasons. So, which show that we mentioned was your personal favorite? And did we forget a wonderful program from the past that got canceled prematurely? Well, please add it in the comments, and hey, we can always make a round 2. If you enjoyed our lineup tonight, please give this video a thumbs up to show your support. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you never miss a memory. From all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you very much for watching.